engineers and engineers. It is an honor to speak to you today, and it's an honor to the UAE, the name of the UAE that you held high. Your brothers in the UAE, brothers and sisters, and all the Arabs. This is a great honor, and we send you the regards and hello to everyone. My question is, سؤال: هل تحس بأي ضغط على الأذن بينما أنت في محطة الفضاء الدولية؟ عندما صعدت بالصاروخ إلى محطة الفضاء الدولية، عندما نطير بالطيارة نحس بضغط على آذاننا، فهل أحسست بهذا في مختلف مراحل رحلتك؟
شكرا دكتور، ما قصرت، وجزيل الشكر للموجودين.
Thank you, Doctor, and a special thank you to everyone present over here and to everyone who sent their regards. And indeed, in the medical aspect, people think of it as a give and take, but there was a need to have a doctor who monitors. For example, during the time of COVID, people went to doctors.
The crew is continuing to work through their in-suit light exercises.
Airlock Houston Space Ground 1, that completes the 10 cycles of in-suit light exercise. You are go for step 5 in the EMU pre-breathe.
And the crew has completed their cycles of those aisle exercises. The next steps for them will include continuing to step through procedures ahead of depressurization, part of which will include getting their SAFERs, or Simplified Aid for EVA Rescue, installed on the back of their spacesuits. The SAFER is essentially a jetpack that could be used in the very unlikely situation that a crew member were to become untethered.
Johnny, we copy. Go for 5. Thanks so much.
And we also have United Arab Emirates astronaut Sultan Al Nayati floating.
On 1 for step 7 and waiting on your go for step 8.
Again, both Rubio and Al Nayati helping to step through procedures with the crew as they continue preparations to exit the Quest airlock later this morning.
Frank, step 8 is in work. It's going to take about 10 minutes. You are go to proceed in step 9. We'll let you know when step 8 is complete. I'm sorry, step 7. We'll let you know when step 8
we'll leave echoes on and proceeding with step 9.
And getting a good view of some of the tools that will be used during today's spacewalk, you did see the space drill, or the pistol grip tool, which will be utilized quite heavily throughout today's spacewalk. You're also seeing some of the tethers float. Those will be utilized to ensure that the crew is attached to the International Space Station at all times. And Rubio is working to get those tools secured to NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg's spacesuit. And Rubio now moving over to get those tools in place on Steve Bowen's spacesuit. And he's being assisted by UAE, or United Arab Emirates astronaut Sultan Al Nayati. Al Nayati's on the left of your screen and Rubio's on the right. As the crew continues to step through those procedures to get tools secured safely to their spacesuits, we do have a video that will be an overview of today's spacewalk, where the duo will exit the station's Quest airlock to install an upgraded International Space Station Roll-Out Solar Array on the 1A power channel on the starboard truss of the station. So let's learn a little bit more about what the crew will do during today's spacewalk.
This video is for the ISS Roll-Out Solar Array, or iROSA, 1A install EVA. Steve Bowen, EV1 with the red stripes, egresses and receives a crew lock bag and puts it on his body restraint tether. EV2 with white stripes, Woody Hoberg, egresses with the crew lock bag on his body restraint tether and closes the thermal cover. EV1 translates up the forward face of the truss and goes starboard. He stops to configure safety tethers. EV2 follows a similar translation path and goes to the port crew equipment translation aid cart to temporarily stow his bag and retrieve an articulating portable foot restraint. Meanwhile, EV1 translates to the iROSA carrier, stows his bag, and retrieves his pistol grip tool. EV1 begins preparing iROSA for removal from the carrier, first releasing a restraint bolt on the upper iROSA. EV2 relocates the foot restraint and installs it on the space station's robotic arm. EV2 ingresses the foot restraint, and then the arm will move him away from the truss. EV1 translates to the lower iROSA and releases its first restraint bolt. He releases both anti-rotation devices back on the upper iROSA and then we'll stow them in the crew lock bag. On the robotic arm, EV2 is flown over to access 2 sets of bolts on the boom end of the upper iROSA. The first 2 bolts will allow the boom deployment system rollers to be moved into place to help with the array deployment later in the spacewalk. The second 2 bolts will release 2 of 4 mechanisms that hold the iROSA in its rolled-up configuration. EV1 partially releases the upper iROSA's restraint bolt and installs the first of 2 handling aids called scoops and prep for removing iROSA from the carrier. The arm flies EV2 over to the hinge end of the upper iROSA, and both crew members work to release the final bolt holding it to the carrier. EV1 installs a second scoop, and EV2 lifts the iROSA off of the carrier. After several maneuvers on the robotic arm, EV2 will arrive at the 1A mod kit worksite. During these maneuvers, EV1 will pick up the temporarily stowed bag from the port cart and reconfigure both crew's safety tethers, on his way to meet EV2 at the mod kit. Both crew will then work to install iROSA onto the 1A mounting bracket. The crew will release the scoops, and EV2 will move into position to release the final bolt, holding iROSA in its folded position. Once released, EV1 will hold iROSA closed while EV2 egresses his foot restraint and gets into position. Both crew will then work together to unfold iROSA and secure the right side onto the mounting bracket. Once secured, EV2 will drive 2 hinge bolts that hold iROSA in the unfolded position. EV2 will then move away from iROSA to reconfigure a safety tether on the arm. EV1 works to drive 8 bolts to fully secure the iROSA to the mounting bracket. Both crew will then work to electrically connect the new iROSA to the ISS power system. They'll first attach 4 connectors to iROSA, then both will move to either side of the legacy array to disconnect the old array and connect a Y cable. This will allow power to flow from both the new iROSA and the legacy array to the space station power system. At this point, EV1 moves into a deployment viewing position, and EV2 will release the final 2 bolts restraining iROSA in the undeployed position. iROSA will deploy over the next 6 to 10 minutes. During deployment, EV1 translates back to the iROSA carrier to reconfigure the carrier beams that previously held the upper iROSA. These beams need to be rotated out of the way to allow access to the lower iROSA.
And that was an overview of what we can expect during today's spacewalk. On your screen here on the top right, you see NASA astronaut Frank Rubio continuing to step through procedures to get the crew ready to head out of the airlock later this morning. And towards the lower left of your screen, you see United Arab Emirates astronaut Sultan Al Nayati. He's working alongside Rubio to prepare to get the simplified aid for EVA rescue or SAFER installed. Once the SAFERs are installed on both Hoburg and Bowen, the crew will move through the airlock and start depressurization procedures. Wow.
Copy, Frank. 0009.
Getting a good view inside the backside of the Extravehicular Mobility Unit, or EMU. Those are the spacesuits that the crew will be wearing during today's spacewalk. They're essentially a mini life support system and provide all of the environment protection, mobility, and communications for the crew members during spacewalks.